I stood on the edge of the stairs and I was ready to jump. And then I thought, this is it. I've had enough. I remembered back to the days of when I went to church. And I remember the pastor saying, if you repent at the last, you won't go to hell. So I thought, okay, I'll do that. So I got down to my knees and I said, God, I'm sorry that I've lived this life. I know I deserve this, God, but please forgive me for what I'm about to do. So as I stood up, I felt like something put its arms around me and said, you're going to be okay. You're going to be all right. That's not the end.
Hey everyone, my name's Dan from Deliverance Down Under, and we're a full-time evangelism ministry with a focus on street evangelism, digital evangelism, healing, deliverance, and discipleship. And right now we're on the move to capture this powerful move of God that's happening all around the world. And we need your support. So if you feel led to support us with a donation, head to deliveranceDownUnder.com for a once-off or a monthly donation to keep our ministry going. So that will cover living expenses, travel costs, equipment, and software expenses. Guys, we appreciate your support so much. Enjoy the video. Thanks. God bless.
Hi, I'm Tessa Williams, and I used to go under the name Contessa. I was Australia's Queen of BDSM for nearly 20 years. And now I've given my life over to the Lord about 5 years ago. And now I work in kids ministry. I'm a co-host of a show called Life the Battlefield, and I'm also a nurse. So the Lord has changed my life for the better. I've given my life over to Him. I've surrendered absolutely everything over to the Lord. And yeah, life is on a different journey now.
So Tessa, can you tell us a bit about your early life, what it was like growing up for you?
Yes, I was born in Cape Town, South Africa. And when I was 3 years old, my family moved to Perth, Western Australia. And my parents started attending the Brethren Church. And for me, growing up, it was a very, very negative experience. It was my first encounter with not feeling good enough and constantly being told off just for being a normal little girl and wanting to play with my Barbies in church. I was told I was evil, I was demonic, I was constantly being put down. And it did, at that age, it did have a massive impact on me. It went just for little innocent questions I would ask about the Lord would just be considered evil. It even got to the point that people from the church were actually telling my dad, who was actually one of the preachers in the church, that I was evil because I had this rebellious, wild spirit in me. And that went on to my teen years. I was a very withdrawn child. Everyone thought I was kind of weird because I was very, very quiet. So it kind of followed me to my teen years. I was bullied a lot, and I didn't really have very many friends. And even in the church, it kind of continued. I went to a church camp, and even asking an innocent question like, is God really going to punish those people in my country in South Africa, in those small rural towns that don't know the Lord? And the pastor said to me, you should go over to those towns and preach and minister to them. That is your calling by God. And I said, no, it's dangerous for a woman. No, I can't go there. And I was made to feel like I was just garbage for it. And I remember just leaving that church camp thinking, I want nothing to do with the Lord at all. If I'm not good enough for you, Lord, then I'm going to go be with the sinners. And that's kind of how I kind of left the church. My home life was very unhappy. I was very, very bullied at home and at school and at church. And the best place that I found for me was with the sinners, with the toxic lifestyle, because I thought, okay, if I am that bad, then I'll go be that bad. I kind of got tired of trying to prove myself to people. So that's when I decided to, Mum suggested that I should enter the modelling industry. And it was like adding fuel to the fire, because it really kind of played on my self-esteem as a young girl, being told, you're not tall enough, you're not thin enough, you're not young enough. And that's when it really kind of hit home for me. And it was kind of looking for an acceptance of being good enough. Like, what is going to be the perfect weight? What's going to be the perfect height? It was when one of my particularly toxic boyfriends took me to a strip club. He wanted to see me jealous. He wanted to see me insecure. He knew exactly that I was that type of person that would probably be so jealous of these women on stage. And I said to him, no, I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to see that. They're probably all junkies and they're probably all strung out. I don't want to see that. But when I walked into this strip club, I saw the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life dancing on stage. Like, this was the era of the Baywatch girls. And in Perth, Western Australia, seeing a woman like that was just rare. And I was seeing them on stage, and they were confident and they were beautiful and they were everything I wanted to be. So I saw one girl in particular, and her dancer name was Sapphire. And she was my age, and she looked exactly the way I wanted to be. She was confident, she was beautiful, she was just so charismatic on stage. So I grabbed a bunch of tipping dollars and I went to go sit on stage. And as I was tipping her, I was saying, wow, you're incredible, you're beautiful. And she was there just performing for me. And my boyfriend at the time saw that I was not turned off and I was not insecure, and I was so happy that he said he was going to take Sapphire for a lap dance. And this girl stood up for me and said, take your girlfriend too. So, he took me to the lap dance room while he was getting a lap dance with this girl, telling me how gorgeous and beautiful and everything she was. And this girl turned around and stood up. And this is the first time I had someone in sisterhood stick up for me and say to him, but your girlfriend's hot too. And he would say, look at your body. And she'd go, but look at your girlfriend's body. And I was like, wow. And she's even standing up for me. I'm not used to this in the modeling industry. And then he went to go touch her, to go untwist her G-string, and she slapped him square in the face that I've never seen anyone do before. And he was dragged out. And then as I was leaving, Sapphire grabbed me by the arm and said to me, what are you doing with a guy like that? And I said, he's my boyfriend. She said, come and work here and you will never have to rely on men ever again. You can make your own money. You don't need to date guys like that. And I said, I'm not pretty like you. I said, I'm not good enough. And Sapphire said to me, you are good enough. You're more than good enough. And that was the first time I felt special. That this woman, this girl, that was everything I wanted to be, told me that I was good enough. And this was like a light bulb moment in my head that I thought, yes, I want to be just like you. I want to be on that stage. I don't care about the money. I just want to be accepted. So it took 2 restraining orders to get away from this guy and relocating to Sydney. And that's when I decided to take my last paycheck from modelling, which was $20,000 that I did for a commercial. And I went to go buy breast implants. And that's when I decided, I was so determined I was going to go work in a strip club. And the first day I was there, I was so chicken I couldn't even walk in. I had to get a friend to convince me to make that first step. And then when I got inside, instead of working, I was telling every guy not to take me. I was so scared. I said, please don't make me go dance there. Please don't make me go on stage. And the owner called me over and he said, Missy, when you're here, you dance, you work. Come back when you're ready. And I thought, no, I'm not going to. I'm going to come back tomorrow and I will be ready. So I came back the next day and I was determined I was going to be a dancer. And another girl took me on stage. We danced together. And then I realized, hang on, this is easy. And I ended up spending 10 years working in strip clubs. And even in that time, I managed to meet a husband. And that was a very, very toxic marriage. It was a man that saw me more as an opportunity and a meal ticket than an actual wife. And the day that I said I want to have a family, he destroyed my ID so I could never leave the industry. So I worked for that whole time without any form of ID, so I could not leave the sex industry at all, even if I wanted to. So, and being born in South Africa, it was hard to recover all that stuff. When the stripping industry died down, I realized that this man I was married to was just a monster who was doing everything in his power to see me unhappy. I needed the next source of income. And that's when I kind of turned to escorting. And I decided that this would be the best way to make money for me because the stripping industry was dying at the time. New girls were coming in and the clubs were just getting packed with girls and not enough clients. So I decided to start escorting. And I remember even though I was married, everything was 50-50. And if I didn't have money for food, I didn't eat. And if I didn't eat, the cat didn't eat. So I was kind of down to my last 40 cents and I couldn't even buy a can of tuna for my cat. So I decided I was going to go on my first escorting job. So with 40 cents in my pocket, I walked all the way to the guy's hotel room and met him in the lobby. And after that job, I walked up with $2,000 in my pocket. And I thought, this is going to be a good way for me to survive now. And after that first job, I sat in the bathtub and just thought in my head, I need to get used to this. I need to harden up and get used to this because this is going to be life for me. So I called a male friend over to have sex with me so I could get the memory of that guy off. And my husband was very aware that I was doing this job. And I needed my husband to leave. He was yeah, words cannot describe how bad he was. So I decided to go into porn. And it wasn't necessarily for the money. It was more to make him angry enough to leave, which it did when he found the videos, which I made it very obvious online. And he found the videos and then he left. And then I was able to just freely and, which I thought safely, live my life. And around that time, I discovered BDSM. Innocently, it was from just reading books from the Marquis de Sade, who they call the grandfather of BDSM. And for those that don't know, BDSM is bondage, domination, and sadomasochism. It is the darkest end of sex and the sex industry. It is where it can start for just light, innocent play or deep, dark torture and the darkest road you could go down. And to me, it was so fascinating because it put me in the role of the aggressor. And the more I saw myself as the aggressive one, being sexually aggressive and hurting people, the more I felt powerful and happy and satisfied. When I found out that it wasn't more than a book, it was a lifestyle, it was a community, I asked friends if they've ever heard of these parties, and they took me to one, and that's where I met my first master. And in BDSM, we have masters and slaves. And I met a man who was a master, and he trained me to be a slave for 1 year. And he suggested that I should become a dominatrix. And I was very flattered. I didn't really see myself as a dominatrix. But he took me to my first dungeon. He told the mistress that he trained me and I was definitely one of his best. And he handed me over to her. And that's where I first started working as a dominatrix. And it was a completely different world from escorting and stripping. It was, these girls they were not girls, they were women. These women were like the Disney witches. They were not these pretty girls that I was used to working with. These were older women and they had that sadistic streak in them. And I felt like I had to prove myself against these women because I was so different to them. Because I was the one that everyone underestimated because I came across so innocent, I had to prove myself and do the hardest and most decrepit stuff to clients. And it's stuff that I can't even describe on this show. But just think of the movie Hostel and just know that there are people into those kind of acts. There are men that pay a lot of money for these horrible acts being done on themselves. And I managed all through that time of being a dominatrix to become Australia's queen of BDSM, as I was called by the media. I did a lot of interviews. I promoted that industry so much. I told people that it was the best way to deal with trauma.
I think a lot of people refuse to believe that this stuff is really happening in the world. Maybe they see movies, they see it online, and it seems like a fantasy. It seems like this fake world that doesn't really exist in the real world. What could you say to people to show them that this stuff is real and it really is happening? Like, how can you speak into that?
This world does exist, and not only does it exist, but it's more scarier than what you see on movies. It's not 50 Shades, it's not glamorous. It's like when an emo person cuts themselves to feel pain. That's how they're dealing with their pain. And there's a lot of underground parties. There's a lot of people that you wouldn't even expect, like some sweet nana and pop that have got this other alter ego side, that they're into these things. I don't want to mention the sites, but there's a lot of communities. And it is a community. It's a community and it's global. They either have trauma, if they want to come and join join that industry, they want to re-script their trauma. They've had something happen to them. And I've had men, grown men, and to this day still haunts me, this grown man who looked like a rugby player come to me and say that he was sexually assaulted a few months prior by another man, and he wants to replay the assault, but except with a woman doing it, because when he thinks about when the man did it to him, it made him just feel aroused and he wanted to kill himself. So he thought if he re-scripted it with a woman doing it and he got aroused, he'll feel okay. And he just said, I feel like less of a man now. And I just told him, we're not going to do the session, we're going to talk. And it's a lot of people like that, re-scripting the worst parts of their trauma. And then you've got the psychopaths that are living out their fantasy. You've got people who purposely sell themselves into this industry to be slaves. And everyone has come broken, even though they may say they're empowered, and no, they come broken, and they come to meet other broken people, and they come to just, pain is their healing. It's like what the Marquis de Sade said, how he said that sex without pain is like food without taste. That is how they live. They take their pain, they take their trauma, and they turn it into something pleasurable. They turn their sickest fantasy into something normal. And this was my life.
What kind of people are profiting and benefiting off this community? Who's funding this? How is this allowed to happen, and who's benefiting from it?
The industry used to be underground and it used to be dungeons. Now it's so mainstream that you can walk on Oxford Street and see Sex Leather where they sell all the equipment and everything. It's a lifestyle. It's a community where people can buy their own equipment and do it in the comfort of their own home, or they can go into a dungeon or a brothel or have these services done. There's also underground parties. Sex workers are profiting from it that specialize in that area. There's also just people that live that lifestyle, and it's not for profit, it's for play. It's just how they live their lives 24/7. While I was in that industry, I was on a lot of medication. I was on antidepressants. I was on tranquilizers. So numb, I couldn't even feel my own skin. But I thought in my head I was helping people. I thought that I was helping them with their trauma, and I was helping them discover this whole new outlet for, discovering their own body. And over time, I got to realize I wasn't helping anyone. I'm contributing to the problems. And a lot of sessions were just going so beyond perverse, and just, it got to the point that I had to even tell the guys, you got to take a break from this before it affects you mentally. And for me, it did. My mental health was declining. I felt very isolated because I felt the stigma of people going, she's a dominatrix, be careful of that one. And seriously, who's going to date someone that was a dominatrix? You'd be so scared behind closed doors with me. But I was never that person. When I go home, I had my cat. I don't believe in abuse. There was a big difference between consent and abuse for me. I would never, for no reason, just harm someone. Then my clients started getting younger and younger. And then it went from these older men that have had every pleasure in life and had it all and just lived a high dopamine life, and this torture was the only thing that could get them off, to guys that just turned 18 were coming in and asking for the most disgusting acts that they seen in a porn video, and they wanted to try it out. And one particular one broke my heart because he didn't even have his first kiss. He said, don't kiss my lips. I'm saving it for my first girlfriend. And I said, what are you going to do to your girlfriend if you're doing stuff like this already? You're going to scare that poor girl off. You mean you never had a chance to fall in love and you're already doing stuff like this? And that's when I realized I'm contributing to the problems of what's happening. Because the next time they come back, it's going to be something harder. It's going to be something worse. They're going to see something in a video that they want to replay. And they're watching porn from such a young age that porn has desensitized them. So the whole thing to me, it wasn't healing. It just started to feel dark and demonic. And I was taking these problems home with me and just thinking about them and just worried about what's going to happen in their future, because I've already seen a lot of these old men have to wear diapers. What is this young boy going to do in a few years? He's going to be so, broken by it. even from the way that I felt inside, of so numb on so much medications, trying to convince myself I was making the world a better place. I knew exactly what was going to happen to them down the line. And a lot of people, I would say, take a break from it. Let your body recover. But nope, they were back the next week. I did become friends with a lot of clients, but I tried not to take on their burdens. The first time I ever I cried after a session was when this mentally handicapped guy came in and he wanted to be hit and beaten and called every derogatory name on the planet. And this poor guy was flopping on the ground and crying while I was hitting him and saying these words. And then afterwards, I helped him get dressed. I helped him, gave him aftercare and everything, just asked if he was okay. And I said, "Why are you doing this?" And he said, he asked me back, "Am I really all those things that people called me?" And I said, "No, you're definitely not." And I realized, okay, he's dealing with his pain by reenacting his pain. And I cried in the change room afterwards. And I had one of the older dominatrixes come up to me and say, "Listen, you leave your problems in that room with Contessa doll. Out here, you are Tessa. You don't take on their problems. You learn to just leave it in there and get on with your life, or it's going to drive you crazy." So over time, I learned to just numb myself. So when I got clients that were into stuff like snuff videos and playing them for me and pleasuring themselves to these videos, I was able to switch off and go into absolute show mode. And then afterwards, just try not to think about it. Because honestly, if I took on too much of their problems, I would have actually gone crazy. A lot of the guys were very wealthy. They were CEOs. They were used to running a company. They were used to being on top. They were used to having people just kissing their feet. They wanted to be put into a different role, and they found it a bit naughty. They just wanted something like that. And those men always wanted the most decrepit, degrading sessions. And then you got people with trauma that's happened from their mothers, that's happened from an older female figure in their life, a dominant female, and they wanted to kind of replay that so they're able to handle it. It's different walks of life. It was both men and women that worked at this place. It was male doms as well. There was a lot of women that would come in to see these men and pay them a lot of money to be whipped and everything else. And then there was people who would voluntarily give themselves over to be abused. 2019, I was on top of the world. I was winning a lot of awards in the Australian adult industry scene. And didn't expect COVID lockdown to happen the next year. So everything went from fast-paced to a sudden halt. I didn't know how to handle all this quiet time, this isolation, not being able to even go out. I also didn't have access to government funds, and I had to dig into my savings to support myself because, as you know, I didn't have ID, so I couldn't get anything. I couldn't work, and my family at the time refused to help me. I had to dig into my savings. I barely survived that one, and then the second hit, and that completely cleaned me out. And I saved a lot over the years, but that 2 years of COVID lockdown, that was enough to eat up all my savings. And it just, also around that time, I decided to come off my medication because my best friend had passed away, and my best friend was on as much medication as me. And one day she did not wake up from sleep, and I thought, I'm not going to go like this. When I stood at her grave, I just said, I'm not going like this. I'm not going to go in my grave. And coming off that kind of medications is not good, especially during COVID lockdown and not having regular access to a doctor. People thought I was going crazy because coming off antidepressants and especially stuff like Xanaxes, and that is horrible. And then during that time, my cat passed away and she died right in front of me. And I just thought, could life get any worse than this? And that's when my landlord sold the building. Like, things were just going worse and worse. My landlord sold the building. I couldn't move anywhere else. And I thought, that's it. I'm going to be homeless. I don't know what else to do. I've called up my sister. I've asked for help. She said no. She's called me every name under the sun. And I'm going to be homeless. And I've just adopted this new cat off the street. And I'm going to be back on the streets with this. I'm going to be on the streets with this cat that I've And I just thought, no, I can't do this. I'm not cut out to be homeless. So I decided to go hang myself that night. I tied one of the nooses to the stairs. I stood on the edge of the stairs and I was ready to jump. And then I thought, this is it. I've had enough. So I stood there and I just said, I just had one thought in my head. I remembered back to the days of when I went to church. And I remember the pastor saying, if you repent at the last, you won't go to hell. So I thought, okay, I'll do that. So I got down to my knees and I said, God, I'm sorry that I've lived this life. And I introduced other people to this lifestyle. I know I deserve this, God, but please forgive me for what I'm about to do. So as I stood up, I felt like something put its arms around me and said, you're going to be okay. You're going to be all right. That's not the end. And I've never felt that feeling before. I was coming down off all these meds feeling horrible, but suddenly I felt peace and I felt like someone was hugging me, just holding me, saying everything's going to be all right. And I just thought, what am I going to do with my life? I made such a mess of it. And all I could feel on my spirit was something saying, open the Bible, open the Bible. You've got a Bible in here. I know you do. You use that Bible for the wrong thing, but you open it up and read it. So I sat down, I opened my Bible, and the first thing I saw on there was Mark. So I called my friend Mark and I said, Mark, I'm going to be evicted very soon. Please help me. I was bawling on the phone. And he said, okay, relax, calm down. I've got a spare bedroom here. Just pack your stuff and come. Just calm down. So that was the homeless situation solved. But then I decided to get into bed and just read the rest of the Bible. And then I read the story of Rahab the prostitute. And I thought, there's prostitutes in the Bible. I thought it was all pure virgins, because when I went to church, it was all about purity and keeping yourself pure, and the woman's worth is in a purity. There's sex workers in the Bible. And that's when I realized that the answers everywhere is in the Bible of what I needed. So I decided to just focus on what I was reading in the Bible, realizing that why didn't I read the Bible directly when I was young instead of getting my information from these preachers that were telling me I was a horrible person? I moved to my friend's house, and that's where I decided I left that industry. I wrote in social media, listen, I've left the industry. And I closed the OnlyFans. I told the clients I'm never coming back. Work called up and said, listen, we've reopened. We've got nearly 90 men asking for you. And I said, listen, I'm never coming back. And yeah, I switched off my phone. I blocked them. I slowly decided to slip into my new lifestyle. I went to church. I went to Hillsong Church and I liked it, but it wasn't really a community feeling. So one day I was going for my walk and I walked past Echo Church. And I overheard the speaker and the pastor going, you belong here. And that's when I thought, okay, maybe that's a sign. So I decided to come back, go there a week, the following week. I walked there and I said first to my mom on the phone, I'm so scared of going there. What if they ask me what I used to do? And Mum said, you answer the question. And if they don't like it, there's another church. So I went there, and the first thing that happened was a bunch of people turned around, smiled at me and came up to me. I thought, oh no, I wanted to just slip in unnoticed. And they were all asking me questions that I wasn't ready to answer. And then the female pastor came up, Nolene came up, and then she said, so what's your testimony? And I said, I'm not ready to tell you yet. And she goes, okay, you tell me when you're ready. So a week later, I went back, and then she came up to me straight after the service and asked me the same question, like, what's your testimony? And I told her everything. And that's when she hugged me and said, you're a child of God now. You're not those things. So I've been there ever since. And that church is where I am. I'm a Sunday school teacher now. They didn't see me as Contessa doll. The first time I heard a child at that church say my name, my real name, Tessa, I realized I wanted to be with these kids. I'd never heard anyone for a long time say my name so purely. And it was from years of being called Contessa doll and then now being called Tessa. Everything that church teaches is everything that goes against my former beliefs. So it was relearning everything and just walking in the way that God wants me to walk. And then last year, of course, I decided to start doing outreach and speaking to women in brothels. as well and helping them leave. And that's when my first encounter with spiritual warfare. One day I was in kids ministry that Sunday morning, and my phone was going off like crazy. I thought there must be something happening. It must be something wrong with Mum. I picked up my phone and there was messages from people saying, "Oh, have you seen this?" It was around the world. Family members from South Africa saying, "Have you seen this? Are you okay?" "Oh, well, no." And it was news articles written about me saying that she used to spank men with a Bible and now she's a Sunday school teacher. And that's when I burst out crying in there. And one of the mothers was in there at the time, and I told her what happened. And she goes, "You're going to be okay. It's fine. It'll be forgotten soon." So then I had to pull myself together and go back into the Sunday school class. And afterwards, I ran straight to Pastor Nolene and I showed her what was happening. And I said, "What's happening?" It's like, I thought I was doing everything right. And this is going to ruin my life. And she goes, "Listen, Echo Church is in the newspaper all the time. God can turn this around for his glory." So I had to endure one day of being around the world news on front covers of who I was and what I am now in my Echo Kids t-shirt and a photo next to it of me in leather. And then I thought, this is every sex worker's nightmare of being outed when she's left. And I thought for sure they're not going to want me to be in kids ministry anymore. But they stood by me. They stood up for me. Those mothers in the Sunday school stood up for me. And that's when I realized the true meaning of Christianity and the Christian community, because they really stood by me and said that we know the real Tessa. We know you. We know you're not these things. But God turned that around for his glory. Somehow I was able to interviews on multiple podcasts and tell my story of, and warn other people about that industry. So God has turned it around for his glory.
So can you tell us a bit about what that journey of rediscovering who you are in Christ, rediscovering who you really are as Tessa, and what was that like healing and deliverance journey like for you as well?
The person I thought I was and the person that God knows who I am are two different people. Like, I'm just putting everything in God's hands, and God is guiding me into the right direction. And I never thought I would be using my BDSM skills in nursing. Like, it was such a natural progression for me that even my lecturer said he thought I was a natural nurse. So God is turning every single negative of my past into a positive. And even being outed in the media has turned around. It's helped me help other women. When I go on outreach, I say that this was the worst that happened to me, and I'm still here. No one's come out after me. Like, I'm able to, just put everything and trust God so much that honestly, I don't think that I would have survived or been here if I didn't suddenly have that one moment of just turning around and asking God to help me. Still very much on my healing journey, even though I'm very much trying to heal others and to speak out. But yeah, I'm still very much on my healing journey. Also learned, even though I carry so much anger with me on to my family for not helping me all those years for getting my ID, which I have now. My mother was able to get that for me, so that's how I'm able to study and have a normal job. But just the anger that I held in me and just turning around saying to my family, it's your fault I was there, and it's your fault that I'm unable to have a family because I was unable to leave that industry. Now I'm able to just sit back and put it in God's hands because God can work miracles. And I'm seeing proof of it all the time. I'm seeing evidence of it in other people's lives and my life. I'm doing stuff that I never thought that I would do. All I can say is now I'm a big advocate for speaking out against the porn and the adult industry now. I know where it can lead. I know the dangers of it. That's why I speak out a lot about it. If there's any way that I can help the next generation and just tell them, listen, I've been there, I've seen the result of what's going to happen to you down the line. And it may not happen, but it's more likely that it would. That's why I like to speak out against the dangers of that whole world.
For any girls or women that are in this industry one way or another, or they're considering it, or maybe they're in it and they're trying to get out, what advice do you have for these women and girls? How to deal with it, how to get out?
First of all, don't don't enter the industry at all. There's other ways to make money. It's not a quick fix. Trust me, it is hard to make money, especially now. A lot of women in that world that I go to visit in the brothels are struggling as well. The money is not consistent. It goes up, it goes down. They are struggling. They need second jobs just because that isn't kind of cutting it for them anymore. Not everyone's going to be Anna Paul. There's only one Anna Paul. And not everyone's going to be a millionaire on OnlyFans. It's you're putting your life, your dignity, your innocence, everything out there for the sake of a few $100s a week that you can earn doing other jobs. And for women who want to leave, like, I know the stigma is the biggest thing holding them back, that they're scared of what other people are going to think about them once they leave and they go do a normal job. But I can tell them from experience, yes, some people may kind of like side eye, but it's no big deal. In that industry, we deal with it all the time. But it's so refreshing to just have leave that industry, have your body to yourself again, is so liberating. Yeah, the money is not that important. I'm surviving and very happy on a quarter of what I used to make back in the old days. And the happiest I've ever been. I'm not on any form of medication anymore. The happiness that I was looking for in psychologists and psychiatrists, and that I found through Jesus. God is the number one for me, is the morning to the night. Like, I got an app on my phone to constantly remind me in case I forget and I get too busy. It is the one thing that is the main focus and the main goal of my life now. It's what has made me happy. And my relationship with God is my number one now.
So Tessa, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. I just want to invite you now to pray for everyone who's been watching.
My Lord and Heavenly Father, thank you for today, for giving me the opportunity to actually spread my testimony and to hope, I'm praying it reaches the right people, for anyone considering joining the agency, for anyone trying to leave the industry, that they may reconsider and find their worth in you, Lord, before they find their worth in money. And anyone who is in the BDSM industry and struggling there, to find out there's a better way rather than harming themselves to deal with their pain, that putting their pain in your hands was the best way. Lord, I pray that more people come to you, and I pray more people find their worth in you. In Jesus' name, amen.